Man, the draft is this month. It's already
And
April.
what is going on, everyone? And welcome to another special edition of Houston Texans football and Bleacher Report. I am one part of your show, Ruben Calvillo, dropping daily Houston Texans content on my YouTube channel, 713 Houston Sportcast. Harley is dropping Texans, Astros, and Rockets also at TheLead_Houston. How's it going?
Doing just fine, man. You were talking about it's already April. My goodness, it's already April the 2nd. Time flies. And the draft is this month. We're only
Mm.
22 days away from the NFL draft. I believe it's April 24th, I want to say. I could be wrong about that. But yeah, man, I mean, about 20 so days. You're looking at 3 weeks.
Mm.
We are 3 weeks away from the NFL draft. I am excited. Fans should be excited. Anybody that's an NFL fan should be excited. Like, I like seeing what all the teams draft, what my team does, and obviously our team being the Houston Texans. Man, let's go and have ourselves a damn good draft day. How about that?
Man, it's just so crazy how the draft has evolved over the last couple of years. It was only, Thursday night, Friday, Saturday, that's it. Now we're moving days. Now we're on every single national channel that is out there. But football, it really is year round, Harley. And
Yeah.
before we jump into it, we always want to give a shout out to Bleacher Report for allowing us to come on here talk Houston Texans football. We always want to shout out the big man upstairs. Harley, there was an article where there was two different scenarios that were given for the Houston Texans, and both of those have the Houston Texans trading up. I wanted to get your reaction to this, but the first one where the Texans trade up to number 17, which is currently held by the Cincinnati Bengals, and they get their choice between Armin Membo, Will Campbell, Kelvin Banks. Let's what it has to say. The Bengals have whiffed on several defensive draft picks as Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins have gotten expensive, which means they don't have many options besides trying again. Getting as many day one and day two picks as possible on defense will give them the best shot at finding cheap contributors. And their current first round might come a little too late as the Falcons and Cardinals are also desperate for pass rushers ahead of them. Maybe they could take an edge rusher on day two and focus on defensive tackle and secondary help. The Texans have rebuilt their offensive line, swapping out Laramie Tunsil, Shaq Mason, Kenyon Green for Cam Robinson, Laken Tomlinson, Ed Ingram, and Trent Brown. So this is why they say that the Houston Texans should, trade up, given that three of those players will be 30 or older this year, and the one who is an Ingram hasn't been good in the NFL. General Manager Nick Casario's job isn't done. Jumping the Seahawks at number 18, who are also in need of offensive line help. He says that's where the Houston Texans should go. And maybe it's not Armin Monroe, like I mentioned earlier, and Will Campbell. They will definitely be gone by 17. But he's talking about trading up to get Kelvin Banks, tackle out of Texas, and talked about him potentially being a guard as this season, as you have Cam Robinson as your left tackle. What would be your reaction, Harley, if the Houston Texans traded up to 17 to get Kelvin Banks Jr. out of Texas?
Well, if you ended the conversation like that, I'm like, okay, very interesting. And then I go, what are the trade details?
Mm.
And the trade details, is you also give up the third round pick, number 79. You also give up your fifth round pick in 166. That, I mean, sure, 79 or 89, I don't mind because you still have another pick there. But trading away 166, now you are going all the way from the 89th pick in the draft, all the way, you might as well skip it, all
Mm.
the way to the sixth or seventh round, I believe, where you pick like 141 or something like that. And that doesn't feel like a Nick Casario kind of move, considering you're trading up for so much. The only way you re-enter this draft is if you trade some of your picks next year. I'm not quite sure if Nick would do that, but considering you only got a second round pick, as far as I know, next year. So you're not going to give that up. The Texans grabbing Kelvin Banks, though, is very intriguing.
Mhm.
Definitely somebody that could play offensive tackle, can play guard as well. So rather interesting just because of his short size and everything. They think he would fit better as a guard. Now, when he was asked about playing guard in the NFL, he said he's never played guard before in college. So, I mean, it's going to be a little bit of a learning experience for him for sure. But I don't mind it. I don't like what you're giving up. I don't
Mm.
mind getting Kelvin Banks, but you are giving up a lot to move up 8 spots in this draft. And you better tell me after drafting Kelvin Banks, like that's my assessment of him. It can't be that. It has to be this guy's going to be the all pro offensive guard or offensive tackle for your team in the next 10 years.
No, and I think that's the only way you could sell it because you have to get this right. CJ Stroud cannot be once again the second most sacked quarterback in the NFL. If they do make the trade, Harley, it would not surprise me. Nick Casario has
Mhm.
shown that if he wants
Yeah.
his guy, he's going to get his guy. It just has to work out, man, because we've seen a David Carr, we've seen a Deshaun Watson just run for their lives, and I don't want to see it with CJ Stroud. I already got a glimpse of it. The second trade proposal has the Houston Texans trading with the Miami Dolphins, sending them number 25 in the second round, number 58 in the third round, number 89. So all you're gonna have as your top two draft picks are pick 13 and pick 79 of the third round. But here's what they say. What if the Texans aren't after an offensive lineman with their top pick? I'm not sure they should feel like their line is a strength on paper. I don't think anyone believes that, by the way. But they've imported a new starting left tackle and 3 veterans to compete for starting roles. Drew Scruggs and Blake Fisher, the 2023 and 2024 second round picks, will be in the starting lineup. Houston could add one more interior lineman to the mix, but that doesn't need to be in round one. There are other ways the Texans could try to help CJ Stroud with Stephon Diggs joining the Patriots and Tank Dell suffering a career-threatening knee injury. They need an outside receiver across from Nico Collins. Christian Kirk is a primary slot wideout, and in the final year of his deal, Dalton Schultz guaranteed money is up after 2025, and Houston might want a better blocker as their lead tight end. Trading up to number 13 could get the Texans in position to take their part of the non-Travis Hunter options at receiver. Would they beat their rival Colts to the punch for Tyler Warren, tight end out of Penn State? Could they land a Tate McMillan? I say his last name?
McMillan.
McMillan. Or Matthew Golden. With Stroud likely signing a massive extension after next season, they can sustain their offense with cheap pass catch solution. Yes, we've been saying for years now that this big contract is coming, but Harley, right here, the Houston Texans are giving up a lot to go to 25 to 13 to either select Tyler Warren, Ted McMillan, or Matthew Golden.
Yeah, that's as much as it's a tough sell for me. I actually, if you ask me which trade
Mm.
I prefer this one. I do. Because
What
I
about
still,
that?
yeah, you're swapping 25 and 13. Okay, you just traded up 12 spots. You know it's going to be a bounty for that kind of trade deal. But yeah, you gave up 58 and 89. You still have 79, and you're getting 135 there as well, too. So sure, you're going from 13 all the way to 79. That's a big dip. But the Houston Texans have a second round pick next year, and they could definitely flash that second round pick
Mm.
and reveal their card and go ahead and say, hey, we're going to re enter ourselves in the NFL draft. And if we want somebody there around, the 50s or 40s, then the Houston Texans can go ahead and do that. They have the capital to do so. This is not a bad idea.
Mm.
I know it sounds scary, but the Texans to grab a premium position at wide receiver or tight end, and to me, the hook, line, and sinker is you jump the Indianapolis Colts here because the Colts are at number 14. And every mock draft I've reacted to,
Tyler Warren.
nearly like 90% of them, Colts take Tyler Warren. Colts take Tyler Warren. Colts take Tyler Warren. I'm not saying that pairing is going to be any good for the Colts because I don't even know who their quarterback for day one is going to be. But I don't want their jobs any easier than it should be. And if the Houston Texans jump all the way to 13, I would assume if Tyler Warren is still the guy on the board, to me, considering you grab Nick Caley, a former tight ends coach, there is something they see that is special for Tyler Warren. And again, this is a guarantee that he better be an all pro tight end. And if you have that on this offense, now you're really cooking with gasoline right now because CJ Stroud and a quarterback's best friend is a tight end position, and Tyler Warren looks to be everything he's been advertised. I actually don't mind this idea at all.
It's a flashy trade, one that we are used to seeing from general manager Nick Caserio. Remember when we were there when they moved from 13 all the way to number 3 to select Will Anderson Jr. Dude, I still think about that moment because that was absolutely insane. But you bring up Tyler Warren, and a lot of people have said this is a deep, draft class for the tight end position. The Houston Texans, they were lacking in the tight end department last season. Dalton Schultz, after getting his big 3-year, $30 million extension, it just felt like he did not want to be out there on the field. And when you're trying to get to places where you never gone before, you got to be swarming. And what you see with Tyler Warren is someone who it takes more than one defender to bring him down. It's someone who moves all over the field. He'll be in the backfield and catch a pass, take it for 15 yards. He'll line up outside. He'll line up inside. He is a big play type of tight end, and that would excite everyone. But what about a Tate McMillan, who is viewed as just a physical specimen? And imagine having two Nico Collins on the outside, and if it's not for Travis Hunter, Ted McMillan is the number one wide receiver in this class. Now, of course, there was that clip going around about him not watching film. That got quickly, handled with soon. That's the number one guy in this draft. The other one, Matthew Golden, Harley, we've been talking about him potentially being here with Houston. He wants to be a Texan. Every time Houston does something, it could be something minor like signing EJ Speed. Matthew Golden likes it. It was reported that he met with the Houston Texans, and then all of a sudden he tweets the 100 emoji. Out of the three, I'm going Tyler Warren like you. I think you could find a wide receiver, later on in this draft also, but you haven't had a tight end here be a threat really since CJ Fedorowicz. You haven't had a great tight end since
What?
Owen Daniels.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I agree with you. A tight end, ultimately, it changes your entire offense because defense is now
This is
the
a Nick
ability.
Haley pick.
That screams Nick Caley.
Has
Again,
to.
former tight ends coach. You love this. You love this kind of idea. And again, I don't have a problem with this one at all. I know that the dip there for between 13 to 79, it's scary. But again, I'm looking at that second round pick next year going, yeah, you know what?
Mm-hmm.
We're going to use that some way, somehow, in order to re-enter into the draft. And let's say somebody is still there because they still need an offensive lineman, and if somebody is there that they like enough, let's say Tate Ratledge is still there around the 50s, and the Texans feel like someone's going to take him before 79, then I mean, it's not a bad idea to, hey, you know what? We're going to go ahead and go up and get him in a draft of Tyler Warren and Tate Ratledge.
Mm.
Man, that would excite the fan base because you grab two guys Tyler Warren ain't no slouch in the blocking department either. He's an all-around tight end, a better, the blocking can improve, obviously, but what he can do on the football field, being lined up anywhere, the big plays he makes. You talked about him even being an option in the backfield where he splits out. I mean, there's so many ways you can use him, and that would be extremely fun. And you get somebody that's kind of an easy button for CJ
Mhm.
Stroud, somebody that CJ can get that reliability, that continuity with, and then just spam it. Continue to spam Tyler Warren. I would love if you got Tyler Warren. I'd love for him to have a similar Brock Bowers kind of
Mm.
usage here in Houston
Give him
because man,
100 targets.
I would love that. And again, the defenses, opposing defenses, they defensive coordinators start scratching their heads and start really brain racking over how can they guard the tight end position, especially when you got a dominant one. And if Tyler Warren is everything they had advertised, he seems to be one of the next best ones coming out in this draft.
In good teams, they have good tight ends. The
Mm,
Chiefs, Travis Kelce, say what you want about him. The Bills got themselves a pretty damn good tight end. They have two good tight
mm,
ends. The Baltimore
yeah,
Ravens have two good tight ends.
yeah,
The Lions have two good tight ends. So
yeah,
the Houston Texans, I don't even think they have one good one. So we heard D'Amico Ryan say some nice things about Brevin Jordan at
yeah.
the annual owners meeting. I'm sorry, coaches meeting. Excited to see what Brevin does, man. And hey, if it works out, bro, about Brevin, like I will have to say, this just shows development. This shows patience, and we and we have had patience with Brevin Jordan. If you remember, Harley, he was one of Nick Casario's first three draft picks. It went
Man,
Davis Mills. No, I'm sorry. Wait, did it go Davis Mills first or
yes,
Nico first?
it was Davis Mills first.
It was Davis Mills, Nico Collins, and then Brevin Jordan as
Yep.
the first three draft picks in the general manager Nick Casario era. Um, Wanted to get your thoughts on another mock draft from Lance Zierlein where he had the Houston Texans selecting Donovan Jackson,
Mm,
offensive guard from Ohio State, 6'3", 315 pounds. If you care about the RAS score, it's at an 8.99. Now, with Donovan Jackson, he's really not been considered a first round pick, but he's been considered a early, early second round pick. So maybe the Houston Texans say, hell, I'll just go ahead and take him with the 25th overall selection. But Donovan Jackson is poised to be a top interior offensive lineman in the 2025 NFL draft, showcasing an impressive resume at the Ohio State at 6'4", 320 pounds. He combines sharp intelligence, explosive mobility, and powerful strength with solid athleticism and punchy hands. Jackson has all the tools to become a long-term force on the NFL offensive line. Hey, I wouldn't mind this whatsoever if he's projected to be an early second rounder and you pretty much have a late first round pick. Why not just, take him in the 25th and take advantage of that extra year when it comes to first round draft picks? So I wouldn't mind this at all. It wouldn't be sexy, but it would want to be okay. You took the right steps into protecting CJ Stroud, and this is the Ohio State, that we're talking about. This is the SEC.
Yeah, so I mean, Donovan Jackson checks off the boxes for the Houston Texans. Like he feels like a Houston Texan kind of pick. He's a five-star recruit out of high school. That is something we've noticed in previous history for Nick Casario draft picks. For some reason, he always gets these guys that are really pretty much a five-star recruit out of high school, these highly acclaimed guys that came out of high school. Donovan Jackson checks off that box. I'd have to Google whether or not he was a captain at Ohio State. I'm not entirely sure about that, but he played in a Power Five school in the Ohio State University. That's already two boxes checked right there. Then you're looking at a guy with 2022 second team All Big Ten
Hmm.
at the guard position. He started all 13 games there. The following year, he's a first team All Big Ten as well. Okay, same thing, guard position. And then this just last year, he goes and plays 5 games at guard. Josh Simmons gets hurt. No problem. I'll play left tackle. And plays 9 games at left tackle. So he's shown the ability to be versatile. The Houston Texans definitely love that. Teams are definitely going to love that. And to show yeah, hey, coach, you know what? No problem. I could play anywhere. Put me
Mhm.
at left tackle. To me, that shows a great work ethic. That shows a great character as well. And that is something else the Houston Texans will be looking at. And it doesn't help that CJ Stroud is also from the Ohio State University. And we've seen in the past the Texans have grabbed guys that have had a connection to CJ Stroud in some way, shape, or
Mhm.
form, or whether or not he likes them in general. We grabbed a lot of practice squad guys for a string of after last year's or 2 years ago. After there's a string of practice squad guys that all, for some reason, had a relationship with CJ Stroud. And none of them obviously made it to this team, but you can't just gloss that over.
Mhm.
Getting Tank Dell, somebody that CJ Stroud, talked about, wanted. Tank Dell obviously wanted to come here. They made it happen. If CJ Stroud has the confidence and knows Donovan Jackson very well, and he tells him, hey, well, I'd love to go get this guy. I mean, what's the difference? He's projected to go 35, but you take him at 25. If he's high on the board and that's the guy they think is the next guard for the next 10 years for the Houston Texans, they believe he's a Pro Bowl guard, then go ahead and get your guy. I don't
Mhm.
care. If he's high on the board, go get him.
This is the first time I felt in a while, Harley, where the Texans can go multiple directions and still be good. It's not like the previous drafts where you kind of knew what they were doing. You knew they had to select CJ. You knew it was going to be either between Sauce or Derek Stingley. Now your choices now are it could be a wide receiver. It could be a tight end. It could be a defensive tackle. On Monday, we did a mock draft where we took Walter Nolan, defensive tackle out of Ole Miss, and you know, we had a lot of people react to that and say they would not be mad at that because the other three, we went offensive heavy, right? We went two guards and a wide receiver, which is why I think any trades from what we've talked about, I don't think the Houston Texans will be in the area to be giving up a lot just because of who we know is going to get the money in the next couple of years, right? In both of the trades, you go from having four selections in the top 100 to only two.
Mhm.
And it's like those two, like you said, they have to work out. Tyler Warren has to be an all pro. Matthew Golden, Ted McMillan have to be a pro bowler, have to be in conversations for rookie of the year. And you could say the same thing, if you're trading up for a Kelvin Banks, he
Mhm.
has to be your starting left tackle or your starting guard week one.
Yes.
Um, However, I'm willing to take risks like that because of what we have already established here. There's already core pieces here. Like the Houston Texans are in an area where they could afford to take the risk because of who they have at key positions. One of them is CJ Stroud. You've said it yourself, Harley. As long as number 7 is here, the future is bright for the Houston Texans. So this is the first time in a long time I'm excited, and I'm excited for the unknown for the first round.
Yeah, I could agree with you there. I understand that. CJ Stroud's always going to give your team a chance. When you find the quarterback that is the franchise, that is that guy,
Mm-hmm.
every fan base knows this. Once you find that quarterback, you feel like you can win it any year.
Mm-hmm.
You feel like you have, well, maybe not, but you have an opportunity and you have a chance to, man,
Fight
I
for it.
got a good feel that I can get in the playoffs and we can make some noise. And that's what I feel like with the Houston Texans. Their additions in the draft is definitely going to be some big help for them going into the 25 season, 26 season. And Donovan Jackson's a great name. Those two trade proposals. Hey, again, if the Houston Texans do one of those trade ideas and they do trade up for a specific player in mind, yeah, they better hope that player specifically is a pro bowler or is an all pro
Mm-hmm.
player. And because there will be a lot of pitchforks coming after the GM and stuff. I think it's starting to realize that there is a lot of pressure for the Houston Texans in this draft one more
Mm.
time to get this right, because it would absolutely suck if you draft an offensive lineman at 25 and it ends up being Kenyon Green 2.0. that would really hurt your team, not only for this year, but for the year after and the years after, because whoever you draft at 25, they're going to be here for year two unless something drastic just, out of our hands happens, But if it's a bust, the flames for Nick Casario get turned on high, and D'Amico Ryan starts feeling a little bit of pressure. There's a whole other conversation where
We're not
this
having
doesn't
it.
turn out the
Well,
way
let's
we're
have it.
talking about.
Well, let's have it. Okay, so here's the other side of taking an offensive lineman. I could go ahead and tell you, Harley, that I don't trust in Nick Casario's offensive line evaluation because he had the highest offensive line in the NFL when CJ Stroud was the second most sacked quarterback in the league. Kenyon Green, my first round pick, I passed on Jalen Carter, Kyle Hamilton, Tyler Lindenbaum for
Mhm.
Kenyon Green. I
Mhm.
selected Juice Scruggs in the second round. I don't know if he's going to be my center of the future. I selected Blake Fisher in the second round last year. Now, he did play, well, I would say good for a rookie towards the end of the
Mhm.
year and into the playoffs. Like we said, there was no difference between him and Titus Howard at right tackle. So I think the jury's still out on him. But from what we've seen from the offensive line, it hasn't worked out in the draft for Nick Casario. Now, with Blake Fisher just starts playing well this year, then that conversation gets put to bed, and we just say, hey, you missed on Kenyon Green. Bust happen in the NFL. You can't hit on all of them. If it doesn't work out, though, Harley, yes, the seat is hot for Nick. The seat is hot for D'Amico because it is fine to get yourself 10 wins. It is fine to
Mhm.
win yourself a division title. Just ask Bill O'Brien for the 5-6 years that he did it. But we're trying to get to places that we've never gone before. And me and Harley have both said D'Amico Ryans is going to get this Houston Texans team a Super Bowl. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. You got to get this draft right.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. Obviously, the Texans, they know that they have to get it right. When you hear Cal McNair talk yesterday about, the Texans and they feel like they're right there to take the next step, that next step isn't, uh, the divisional round of the playoffs. That next step, ladies and gentlemen, is a Super Bowl conversation. That is the next step. That is what we want here
Because
in
that's where
Houston.
you're at.
And yeah, you're in that, but you have to take that next step in order to get to it. The Texans, they didn't do nothing last year. You thought that they were going to take that step. They ultimately didn't. Yes, there's context that adds to the reasons to why they didn't take that next step last year. They were one of the most hyped teams going into the offseason last year. It just didn't work out for them. Again, context says otherwise and all this, but at the end of the day, what does it say? You lost in the divisional round of the playoffs. That's what people are going to look at. If the Houston Texans want to eliminate that conversation, that stigma of, oh, they can't beat nobody. Oh, when they face the good teams, they lose. You got to start beating the good teams, which you've done before a little bit, but in the regular season, you got to start doing it in the playoffs. You got to start shaking and baking and making some noise in the playoffs because obviously that's where it matters the most.
Mhm.
This Texans team, we all know the draft, this is a big thing for them. Again, if they miss out, if they swing and miss on the offensive line at 25 or whatever, is going to be a talking point for the rest of the regular season. And it is going to be an uncomfortable conversation during the season and then the off season of 2026, because then you will have the conversation of, damn, does Nick Casario, he's done, is this is as far as we could get with Nick? And then the conversation turns into D'Amico, and I hate to do that because I love D'Amico. That's my guy. I
We
want
all love
all the success
D'Amico.
for D'Amico Ryans. We all do. He's a former Houston Texan. We all want him to be successful. But at the end of the day, you got to get results. And D'Amico knows it. Nick Casario knows it. And that's why they did what they did this year. That's why they traded away Laramie Tunsil. We could sweep under all the other stuff under the rug, but that rug starts piling up, and you still got your dirty dishes underneath there. You still got to show everyone who it is. Texans flushed the offensive line room. They're trying to reset it. Is Cal McNair patient enough to wait on results? That's the biggest thing, too.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, are we patient enough for this Houston Texans team? And that will be seen later on. But that is
Never.
Harley. I am Ruben. For more Houston Texans content, just feel free to come back on Friday. Guys, do us a favor. Have a real blessed rest of your day.